Hello, this is Sean with Voices Live On, and I'm speaking with a lady that is up in Michigan, Ann Arbor. Katy, Lynn, how you doing?
Good. I'm great today. Happy to be talking to you.
All right, so your mother is Ellen, and she is sisters with Jim Beatty, and we're going to be doing a little bit of memories of the family and Jim and Phyllis today. So you live up there. Your mother lives up there as well, and you've got a
Mhm.
couple brothers, Steve and Ben. And where does Steve reside?
He's out in Oregon in the Portland area, working for Nike.
And then your brother Ben is pretty far away.
Yeah, so he's way over in New Zealand. Got to visit him there one time. But he's a professor there at a university on the South Island.
Okay. So why don't you give me just a little bit of history of your mom? I know that obviously she grew up in Indianapolis with Jim, but what are some things that you know just in general? We can dive deeper, but just about her life. What are some things that she's
So
been involved with through her life?
she actually they had a house in Fort Wayne. It was a family house that I remember visiting a lot when I was little, where their parents lived. And she moved up to Michigan to go to University of Michigan here, kind of followed her brother and sister, who had both attended the University of Michigan. And she actually dropped out of school at one point and went off to live in New York for a while on her own. Then ended up coming back, got married to my dad, and finished up college later when we were kids. I remember coming into Ann Arbor a lot when I was a kid while she was going to classes and stuff. And she became a teacher. She was home with us a lot of our childhood, but she was a teacher with strong backgrounds in reading and social studies. And she's just been a really big part of all of our lives, my brothers and I. Very present. She's done a lot to help me raise my kid because we live so close. So,
And what is your
um,
child's name?
Brooke.
Brooke is your child. Do you know how
Mhm.
your father and mom met? How they originally bumped into each other?
They met on a blind date in their freshman year of college. So, and according to my dad, like he had kind of was like, okay, she's the one right away. I don't think my mom was quite as quick to come to that conclusion, um, but yeah, it was.
So when you guys came down to Indianapolis, those early years for you, what are some of the, well, first off, where did Jim and Phyllis and the kids live? And then also put in perspective, like your age compared to Lynn and Jay and Leanne, like as far as how much older they were from you and whatnot.
Yeah, so my mom is 11 years younger than Jim, and ended up, she, like, even as a teen, spent some time, helping raise or take care of Jay and Lynn, and so it was around, there was a big age difference, I guess, between them. And so we were quite a bit younger. When I remember my cousins, they were already teenagers, right? When my memories of going to Jim and Phyllis's house, and um, the 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 big and important time for us within my family was to go there for Thanksgiving, and so that was something we looked forward to every November, and we would travel down, and it was usually just my mom and my brothers and I. My dad was a little bit of a hermit and didn't do a lot of traveling with us. He preferred to stay home. And so we would all go down. And what was really special about that time for me actually was kind of the opportunity that it gave me to feel part of a bigger family. I think my little nuclear family was like, we didn't have a lot of people over. I sometimes would have a friend over or something like that, but we never had big gatherings and things like that at my house. And so when we would go to Jim and Phyllis's, it was like this big family gathering, and got to see these cousins that I never got to see very often. And, they always had these networks of other people coming and going into the house. And Jim and Phyllis's lives felt bigger in the sense of they always had a lot of people coming and going as well. So to go there and to kind of feel part of that bigger network of people was always really important to me when I was little. And it just felt very alive, their house.
So how do you describe Phyllis? Like, just kind of overall, what was her personality like to you? What was some of the memories you remember her doing? Any particular things around the house? Just kind of go into Phyllis a little bit.
So Phyllis was an incredibly kind person. She was very interested. She always was very interested and curious about whatever was going on in your life, whatever was going on in the world. She was always full of a lot of questions. I didn't think of her as a judgmental person, but kind of the opposite. Like, she's just really inquisitive. And she liked to discuss ideas and think deeply about things. And so one of the memories that I have in particular is of my mom and her, like, spending hours in the kitchen, like at these Thanksgiving gatherings in particular. Like, there would be a lot of time spent in the kitchen, preparing food and talking and stuff. And they would just be having these like really intense and deep conversations, not just about what was going on like in the family and stuff, but also like kind of in a bigger sense around in the world and stuff, and philosophically, like ideas. And she was also, it's like when she knew that you liked something, like she would just go so out of her way for you. Like I remember, for example, it was this really special thing for her to make these twice baked potatoes. And once she figured out that this was like something that my mom didn't make and that we always looked forward to at Thanksgiving, then she always like kind of went out of her way to make sure that they were there and that kind of thing. So that's the kind of person that I remember her to be. So.
And then kind of the same for Jim. Like, when you were young, how would you describe him? I know he's very tall compared to you kids and everything, but what would be some of the memories you have very young of Jim?
Well, it's interesting because I think with Jim, he wasn't as talkative. He wasn't, and so when he did say something, it's like you listened. He was that type of a person when I was a kid. Like, if he was going to chime in, then it was either going to be funny, or it was going to be really insightful, or it was going to be like, it was going to really contribute something to the conversation, was what it felt like. And I remember at a very young age, I think one of my first feelings that I associate with him is that he was a person who it really mattered kind of to have his respect. And I think that's always been a feeling that I've kind of carried with me. And I don't know exactly how to say like why that feeling formed, but I do feel like it has something to do with how much he shared his appreciation of others. And like, so he was a person who would talk with great appreciation about musicians that he liked, for example, or people that he liked, friends that he had, people he worked with, people from history, experiences that he'd had. Like, the tone with which he would talk about these things was with a kind of, he would share his admiration or what he enjoyed about it, or about that person. And it was the kind of thing that made you feel like, I want to be one of those people that he would say something. He would admire me. He would have something to admire, right? Like, you wanted to be a person who he would be able to find something to admire. You wanted to be in the company of those people. So,
what do you really know about your mom and Jim's parents?
Well, I know stories about their history, from like the idea that I know that my grandmother was in an orphanage, and that was kind of a big informative piece of her life and affected a lot of things, I think. I know that my grandfather worked very hard his whole life. I know that he was incredibly skilled with in a lot of different, very practical ways. A lot of my memories of them is that they were building a house when I was little down in Florida, and they started doing this when they were in their 70s, and they decided we're just going to build a house. And my grandma was the designer. She was the one with the vision. She was the one with the ideas. She was the one with the design ability. And she was a person who, for example, all through her childhood, my mom said this just the other day. She doesn't think that she wore a piece of store-bought clothing until she was a late teen, or maybe going off to college kind of thing, because her mother was such a great seamstress and did that kind of work. And so when it came to building a house, it was kind of like she was the seamstress of it. And then my grandfather was just able to do all of these things. Like, he was a mason, could do masonry, he could do plumbing, he could do electricity, he could, put up drywall, he could just do all that stuff, right? And so they really did build this house, the two of them, by hand. And it was very impressive. And I remember going to that house and, seeing it with no walls in yet, just the frame, and, have some very fun memories of spending time there, I guess, with them. My grandfather taught us how to play, like, we would play this pickleball, and there was a dirt road in front of their house because it wasn't very built up. And there was this dirt road, and we would play pickleball in the road with Grandpa, and it was like, ooh, you can play in the road, he let us do that and stuff. And, so it was just, they were very fun people.
Did you ever hear the story of Jim when he was a kid walking through a snowstorm and coming up on a German prison camp, literally in Fort Wayne?
I have heard that story. Yes. I don't know that I have anything to add to that story, though.
Well, I guess my
just
point
remember
is, from spending the past couple months interviewing Jim, he's had a lot of very unique things happen throughout his life. So that brings us to unique things about Jim. Like, for example, when he first went into the military as an attorney, how he had to defend the young cadets, basically, that were kind of framed, and was kind of like A Few Good Men as far as that whole scenario. So what are some of those situations about Jim that that are very unique to him as far as what he's accomplished, or just things that about Jim's life that you've learned over the years?
Well, one of the stories that I heard relatively recently from him that I had never known was that he told a story about a time when he when he was hitchhiking, and he went he was hitchhiking, and okay, I'm going to get this wrong. I don't want to tell the story wrong. Hold on. Let me think a minute about how things went. I feel like I'm gonna tell this inaccurately.
Go with your gut. Go with your gut.
Well, my gut is that, I guess, I'm not going to be good about telling a specific story about Jim's life in that way, like with that kind of detail, like about something that happened to him. What I think is interesting about the stories that I have heard about Jim's life is how many circumstances he's been in where he's like been aware in the moment of, like, of a situation of prejudice, or of a situation of like, so the story that I'm thinking of has to do with him, having, been hitchhiking, and that he got himself into a situation where he kind of realized right in the next town here near his home, there was a situation where there was some very active bigotry going on, and he was confronted with it, right? Like he could see it, right, in this very plain way. And and he was like 17 years old at the time. And the fact that at that time, like as a 17-year-old, having grown up in the culture, that he was so aware that there was something not right about that stuff, like from a very young age. Like these are the stories that I've heard of him, is like kind of how much on the radar it was for him always to be kind of looking out and noticing these moments when things are really unjust, or that people are being treated like in a really unfair way, right? That was kind of like that. It's always been right there in his face, and he's noticed it, and he's paid attention instead of looking away from it, right? And attending to it, or trying to do something about it instead of walking away from those situations,
So did you happen to know that he started the first African-American radio station in Indianapolis?
Yes.
He and a few other individuals did?
Yeah.
So as far as you looking at Jim being a husband to Phyllis, how would you describe their dynamic?
Hmm. I would say that one of the things that I noticed about their relationship is how much of an intellectual compatibility there was in them, in the sense of like that Phyllis could be right there with Jim, about what was going on politically and all these things, in the realm that he was in, right? With politics and stuff, that she was just as involved, and had, even though she wasn't professionally working within that realm, that she was very much a part of that life. And I think that, kind of hearkening back to this idea that like something, hearkening back to this idea that of the importance of these Thanksgiving gatherings for me, coming from a family where, like in my own family, there was a lot of intellectual debate and discussion that would go on about things. My mom and dad were both really interested in philosophy and politics and all of these things. And, we would have these conversations around the dinner table about this kind of stuff. But it was this kind of insulated thing that was like, my family did this. And then I would go to school, for example, and I would feel like a weirdo for having a family that would actually have these kinds of conversations at the dinner table. And when I would go to Jim and Phyllis's house, one of the things and I would say this about their marriage and everything, is that there was a lot of intellectual activity, right? Discussion, and passion about these things, like just so much emotion and passion and caring about what's going on in the world, right? And wanting to be a part of it and wanting to contribute to it in a positive way and all this stuff. It's very, very outwardly looking, right? Like, how are we being a part of the world? And when I would go there and I would be in that environment, it's kind of like, not only did it make me feel that like I wasn't that my world was bigger, in the sense that like this thing that I engaged in with my family or whatever, like maybe it's not so weird, like there's other people that do this too. But it also took that engagement of like these debates and stuff like that and turned it outward and made it about other people, and made it about the systems that we're working with, and made it about being a part of our politics and that sort of thing. And that was very much as much from Phyllis, and her engagement and her like, and I, in her, part of that went in a direction of her faith, right? Like, to be turning that outward, right? Like, and thinking about the contribution to other people and the care of other people, right, within the realm of her faith. And so I think that I guess I saw a real compatibility between these people in being able to create a environment within their home that was very, really genuine and deeply public service oriented, right? Like, in the most authentic way,
That's beautiful.
Mm.
So, obviously, you've been able to spend time with both your mom and Jim around each other. How do you describe their dynamic?
So it's interesting because I've kind of seen them together over the years and stuff. And one of the things that I've seen is from my perspective, I see a closeness more now as they get older than, I mean, I was younger. Maybe I just didn't recognize, but I'm very conscious. Let me put it this way. As an older person, I'm very conscious of how important it seems to be that relationship with one another. They both lost their sister in the last couple of years. And I think in particular after that, like, the attention that both have given to, like, trying to make sure that there's time spent together, and these sorts of things, sharing stories with one another and this sort of thing. I think that there's a real, I think that they're very important to each other. And I think that they both came from a family that really was very close. Like, when they were young, my mom was quite a bit younger than her brother. Like, I mean, there were a lot of age difference. And so in some ways, like, he was always older, and stuff, and she was the little sister. But I think that family dynamic and stuff was very important when they were growing up. And it was a very comfortable place. My mom talks about her childhood as being this very happy time for her. She describes her brother as being this incredibly charismatic and strong force in her life when she was little, like really, he was so outgoing. He has always surrounded by friends, stuff like that. Was much shyer and, struggled a bit more in those ways and stuff like that, and kind of admired his ability to attract such interesting people around him. And so I think that she has always enjoyed spending time with him. I definitely see that.
That's beautiful. All right. So this is kind of a unique question, and we're kind of wrapping up here.
Okay.
Unless if there's any other stories that you want to share that are specific situations, cool memories that maybe Jim would flash back to, or you just kind of spending time with them. Is there anything else that kind of stands out?
There's one other thing I'd like to talk about. And I think that it's that, one of the things that Jim invited me to be a part of, especially as I got older, was his Saturday groups. And so much, it was so important. Like, by the time I got to high school and college, to go down and to visit at that time, it became another special thing to be doing, was to try and time our visits so that we would be there on a Saturday. And that was because the Saturday group was going to meet at that time. And they were such fun experiences to hang out with that group of people. And it was, the humor, it was the way in which I'd learned so much, from these people. And it was the way in which that, like, community of they were older people, like all the people were older than me, and like the things that I would kind of learn from them, but also the way in which they would kind of say, hey, yeah, come be a part of our group, to be included, and to kind of feel like, hey, I don't know, it's I'm valued to be there, right? Like, I don't know how else to put it, but like that there was a sense of that people appreciated my contribution, or my perspective on things and stuff like that. And to be in the company of all these people who were really very knowledgeable, very extremely talented, in their fields and stuff like that, to be invited into a group like that and stuff like that meant a lot to me as a young person, and has influenced me a lot through the years. Like the advice that some of those people have given me and things like that has weighed very heavily in my life. And so the fact that Jim, has kind of allowed me to be a part of that, or, invited me in, I think I really have always appreciated. And I think it kind of speaks to the fact that he is a person who really does this way in which he shares. Okay, how can I put this? One of the ways that I feel like Jim expresses his appreciation of others is by inviting you in and kind of trusting that you are going to care too in this thing that he, is, say, fascinated by or interested in or feeling is important. So an example would be his music, right? Like when Jim invites you to come and sit down and listen to a piece of music with him, it is a sign of how much he appreciates you, right? That you are a person that he sees would value this, right? Or thinks that connection that it's worth the time to be connecting, on this. And it is a real gift to, like, when he does those things with people in his life, it is a real gift. People feel that it is. And I think it is one of the things that makes him such a joy to be around, is that he makes other people feel really important in the way that he chooses to invite you in and share his own excitement and passion about things. And I guess I'll stop there.
That was great. All right. So if physicality and money was no object, and you could take your mom and Jim anywhere on the planet and give them an experience that you also would experience with them. I hope it just went sideways. There we go.
Sorry. Let's try again. Okay.
What would where would you go, and what would you guys do?
Oh my gosh. Okay, can you give me just a minute to think about it?
I'll give you 18 seconds.
Wait. Can we travel through time?
Where would you go and what would you do?
Where would we go and what would we do? I think that we would be in a place that's like really comfortable weather-wise, but it wouldn't matter as much where we were. I think it would have. I think it would be any country.
Pick a country.
Okay, I'm gonna pick New Zealand because my brother's there.
Okay.
And it's an amazing place, and it's unique, and it's not a place that is easy to get to, in life. So yeah, we go to New Zealand. But I do feel like we'd only go to New Zealand if we could bring all the people around that are fun to be with too. Like it would have to be like not just my mom and Jim. It would have to be like that community of people that is. I think spending time with the people that are fun to be with is really what both of them would enjoy most. That's my impression.
Okay.
It's all about the community.
Now looking at the camera, what do you want to say to Jim directly?
Well, Jim, I really want to thank you for the ways in which you've allowed me to be a part of your life and the stories that you've shared and the people that you've allowed me to know through you. And the way in which you've been so generous about sharing the things that you're passionate about and that you care about and stuff. I think that you've made this world a better place for the people, for everybody that lives you've touched. That's my experience is not unique.
Well, Katy, thank you very much for your time today and recapping a lot of really cool situations that I'm sure Jim and the family will love being able to hear and reminisce about. And I know that we're going to be also getting some memories from your mom about Jim and their lives as siblings and everything. And we look forward to that. But is there anything else you'd like to say before I close out?
Just thank you for doing this. I think this is a wonderful gift to be giving the family. I really appreciate your work on this.
Okay, we'll just stay on the line. I'm going to close this out.